The meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will now come to order. Mr. Tharney, would you please lead us in the pledge to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Give it back to you all the time.
Mr. Board President, I will now proceed with the roll call. Ms. Arminio.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Ms. DeMayo. Here. Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Nostine.
Here.
Mr. Poi.
Here.
Mr. Prezioso.
Here.
Mr. Ryback.
Here.
Mr. Zarneski.
Here.
Mr. Board President, you have a quorum present this evening. I got it. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted February 6, 2015 at all schools, Home News Tribune, Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Gorski. At this time, we'll hear reports from our student reps.
Good evening, everyone. So for tonight's report, Mill Lake School focuses on good character traits specified for each month, and for February, the theme is trustworthiness, and students show understanding of these good character traits through art, class activities, and pledges of respect signed by each student. The Monroe Township Middle School students' artwork is being displayed at the Monroe Township Public Library in the Exceptional Student Art Display. 5 students from the middle school advanced to the regional finalist level of the 2014 and 2015 National History Bee. The Monroe Township High School Media Center is promoting reading and literacy analysis and discussion through its annual One Book Read, which will take place on the evening of Thursday, February 19th, 2015, amongst high school students and staff. The incoming freshmen attended an orientation at the high school last night where students listened to a brief presentation, received a tour of the high school, and learned about some clubs and fall sports that are available. And the student council from the high school and some of the elementary schools are actively engaging in current and upcoming fundraising events. Some of these efforts are geared toward raising money for the student council and the respective school, while others are supporting recognizable charitable efforts.
The MTHS Booster Club recently held a comedy night fundraiser event for athletics programs and scholarships. The debate club had its first meeting today after school. The club held an informational session for prospective competitors. The club intends to hold school-level competitions later this year, most likely in or around the month of May. Seeing as it is the club's first year that will be operating, the competition will be school-wide this year, and then beginning next year, they will intend to compete in pre-existing state and national debate organizations. Additionally, the MTHS Chapter for Youth and Government is finalizing registration and is preparing for the pre-legislative conference next month with students from across the state of New Jersey, encouraging a more active participation and understanding in political process, as well as current significant socioeconomic and political events affecting them and the state of New Jersey as a whole. And student participation and engagement in the high schools chapter of the organization has increased tremendously from years past. Students in DECA and FBLA are continuing their testing for the state level for those students who qualified and advanced. Part of the supervised online testing for DECA will be completed by the end of the week, and FBLA testing will take place on the last week of February at the actual state conference. In addition, FBLA also held a recent karaoke fundraiser at the high school benefiting the March of Dimes. And finally, with the conclusion of the second marking period at all of the schools, students in the high school and the middle school are preparing for course requests for next year. Students will be meeting with their guidance counselors to submit their individual requests for the variety of courses offered at the high school to prepare them for careers, as well as post-secondary education as outlined in the program of studies located on the high school's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayter and Mr. Tharney. I will now read the closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session. In accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, to discuss the following subjects: to receive attorney advice regarding the matter entitled Kathy Kolopanovich versus Anthony Prezioso, Monroe Township Board of Education, Middlesex County, agency reference number C13-14, OAL docket number EEC 09925-2014N. To discuss student residency matters and also, and also to hear a report on harassment, intimidation, and bullying. The discussion conducted in closed session may be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. We anticipate that this closed session will require 30 to 45 minutes. If it runs beyond that time, then we will come out and give you an estimate of how soon we anticipate we'll be able to resume with the public portion of our meeting. So at this time, we will go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Abstentions?
Got this already.
Abstain? Okay. Patrick Duncan.
Mr. Zarneski's not here, too.
The Board of Education will now resume its public portion of the meeting, and at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Patrick Duncan of the New Jersey School Boards Association. Mr. Duncan will be helping train the board in terms of a superintendent's salary. It's important that we have this presentation since we are in the process of attempting to find a replacement for Dr. Hamilton, and we need to have it done before we get into the actual stage of drafting any contract or looking at it. So welcome, Mr. Duncan, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It is one of the most consequential decisions that the board's going to make in hiring the superintendent. I know you guys have been doing a lot of hard work during the superintendent search. And we provide this training all around the state. I have to say this is by far the largest crowd I've ever given this training in front of, so that's interesting. But I just want to take a little bit of time and walk you through kind of the legal requirements of what you need to do and the timeframes that you need to follow and the regulations that you need to follow in order to negotiate the contract. At any time after this presentation, if you have questions, you have my card. Please feel free to pick up the phone or email me or what have you. I'd be happy to follow up with you. If I provided a packet, I hope everybody has it that was handed out to you. If not, it'll be handed around to you. There are some long-standing legal requirements that you need to be aware of. One is, and this of course makes sense, but when you do vote on the new superintendent, you have to do that in public, obviously. It has to be a roll call vote, and it requires a full majority of the board. It doesn't matter what the quorum is, you need to have a full majority of the board in order to ratify that contract. The contract can be a 3-year contract, a 4-year contract, or a 5-year contract. Those are the options in front of you. And another, it's a little bit of an oddity, but that contract has to end on July 1st, not June 30th. It has to end on July 1st. It's just kind of a quirk in New Jersey state law. So one other requirement that you need to know that's kind of on the end of the superintendent contract is if you decide for whatever reason at a later date not to renew the contract that you sign with your superintendent. Say you sign a 3-year contract with this superintendent, and after 2 years you decide you're not going to re-up on that contract. It's very important that you provide 3 months notice for every year of the contract. So if it is a 3-year contract, 90 days, 4 years, 120 days, and 5 years, so on. Why that's so very important, and I do mention in this presentation, is if you miss that deadline, the consequence of missing that deadline is that you've just bought yourself an automatic renewal of that contract on the same term. So you would buy yourself another 3-year contract. So that's an important thing to know. So in addition to those kind of basic statutory requirements, 2008, 2009, pretty much the whole ballgame changed for a couple of reasons. One was the accountability regulations. And obviously, the superintendent's compensation package and employment contract has to be consistent with the accountability regulations, and also the superintendent salary cap. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about both of those. First of all, on the superintendent salary cap, the packet of information that I gave you, on the right-hand side, there should be a sheet of paper that has the caps depending on enrollment. My understanding is you have about 6,100 students. So that makes the superintendent salary cap for this district at the base level $165,000. I didn't panic you there for a second, right? $165,000. Obviously, you have a high school in this district, so you get a bump of $2,500. So you're up to $67,500. So that is the cap on base level compensation for the superintendent. As part of the superintendent contract, you're not required, first of all, you're not required to be at cap. That's just the maximum that you're allowed to pay. You can also provide for certain merit pay criteria to be negotiated into the contract. And I'm not going to get too deep into the details here, but you can have certain qualitative merit criteria. You can have two of those, and you can have 3 quantitative merit criteria. And I've provided you examples of those criteria in the materials that I gave you. But if you add all of those together in the maximum payout, the potential merit pay for the superintendent would be 14.9% of the base compensation. So you can do that. What you need to know that is if you want to explore the idea of having merit pay, the structure for that, the framework of that has to be negotiated into the contract at the beginning of the process. And the merit criteria that you discuss and arrive at as a board has to be pre-approved by the executive county superintendent prior to that year taking place. You can't make up the merit criteria midway through the school year. They have to be easily identifiable at the beginning of the year, and that way you'll know whether you hit those criteria or not at the end of the year. One other thing about the merit pay is that it's not pensionable. It's a one-time payment. So if they hit all the merit criteria and get the 15% bump in their pay, it's a one-time payment. It doesn't feed into it's not pensionable. It doesn't feed into their base level salary. They start over again at the beginning of the school year, okay? So that's the basics of the superintendent salary cap. Now, part of that 2007 avalanche of regulations was also the accountability regulations. So part of that was that the executive county superintendent has to pre-approve the contract that you reach with your superintendent. And what they're going to look at is they're going to look at the total compensation package for the superintendent that you're offering, and they are going to, number one, make sure that it is below the cap, but also how it stacks up against comparable school districts throughout the state. And what they need in order to make that determination is they need you to fill out this very detailed sheet of what the compensation is, what the direct wages are, what the benefits are, and I've provided you a copy of that spreadsheet that you're going to need to fill out and provide to the executive county superintendent. Now, it's also important, especially that you know what the time frames are. The executive county superintendent has to approve that contract before you enter into the contract and before you give notice to the public that you've selected a particular candidate. And so you need to give, the notice requirements are that you need to give 30 days notice before you take a vote on the superintendent's contract. And you need to give 10 days notice before you have a public hearing on the contract. Okay, so that's the basic time frame that you're looking at. The contract that you're going to be negotiating, though, is a new contract. And there's a little bit of a wrinkle in the law that I need to explain, and that is that because it is a new contract, right, you technically don't need to give public notice. The law says that they encourage you to give public notice, but that can be very tricky in the situation where a superintendent works in an existing district and they don't know for sure whether they have the job until the executive county superintendent signs off on the contract. So I'm just making you aware of that wrinkle in the law. It's not strictly required in those circumstances, it's just encouraged. If you're renewing a contract or something like that, absolutely you have to have public notice and a public hearing. Okay, so I just want to talk briefly about some of the things that are required in the accountability regulations, that essentially stuff that you're not allowed to do when you negotiate the superintendent contract. You are not allowed to provide for a severance clause in that contract that allows for a payout if you guys go your separate ways in the middle of that contract. It's limited to 3 months of pay for every year remaining on the contract. That's the maximum separation clause, I guess, allowed in the contract. You can negotiate something less than that, but no more than that, or the executive county superintendent will not approve that contract. Has to be consistent with the travel regulations. So under New Jersey travel regulations, you can pay mileage, but it's limited to 31 cents a mile. You can't pay the IRS rate. That's just one example of that. You can't pay somebody's FICA taxes or things of that nature, because the way that the executive county superintendent views that is that's just kind of a way around the superintendent salary cap, is providing compensation in that fashion. There are certain criteria that you need to be aware of in terms of sick leave and vacation. I'm not going to get into the details here. There are provisions that you can, if you are not at cap, okay, you can provide in the contract that there is an automatic increase as long as they are performing satisfactory in year 1, 2, or 3 of the contract. So you could negotiate something that says, I'm just making numbers up now, but you know your salary is $150,000 the first year. Satisfactory performance will increase your pay by 2%. That's permissible under the accountability regulations to provide that into your contract. You can also have kind of another type of merit pay as part of the contract, saying that the base level increase will be 2%, but if you meet predetermined criteria, and again, it has to be pre-approved by the superintendent, including your contract, we could provide for a salary increase higher than that. Another thing you need to be aware of, and this is a particular issue when it comes to health insurance, and that is that by law, you cannot treat the superintendent any better than you treat your teaching staff. So this is a little inside baseball, but if your teaching staff are paying at phase 4 of Chapter 78, you can't say to your superintendent, we'll let you pay at phase 1. They have to pay at the same rate that the teachers are paying. So just be aware of that, because that's something that you might hear from the candidate, that they'd like to pay less and who wouldn't for their health insurance. But that's not permissible under the law. The other thing is this seems commonsensical, but you must have a provision in the contract that says if the superintendent loses their certification, they lose their job, the contract's null and void. It just happens automatically. And that's consistent with state law, but now it says that that has to be, black letter in the 4 corners of the contract. So just be aware of that. So I just gave you a truncated version of things that can't be in the contract and things that need to be in the contract. So it seems like a lot to kind of digest. But the good news is the state provided you with plenty of guidance. And so what they did is they tasked the New Jersey School Boards Association and the association representing superintendents to sit down and kind of hash out a model contract. And it's not technically required under the law that you follow that model contract, but the executive county superintendent wants to see the basic outlines of that model contract. So you're likely going to have an attorney help you draft the final contract. That's the template that they ought to be following, and it will certainly speed the process of being approved by the executive county superintendent if you use that format. That was the kind of truncated version of that training. I know you guys have a full agenda tonight. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Duncan?
I have a question.
Sure.
If we go from student enrollment, if we're now under 6,500, if we bump up over 6,500, how would that play into the contract?
The contract would be the contract for the term that you agreed to. You could make a motion's the wrong terminology, but you could ask the superintendent whether it would be okay to open up the contract at that point to provide for some higher salary increase. The other option, if you think that is a likelihood, then you might be able to try to include that in the terms of the contract, that if you bump up over 6,500 using official state numbers, that the pay will automatically go up. Truthfully, I don't know whether the executive county superintendent will approve that or not. I find it unlikely, but that's not something that is crystal clear in the law. So something you might speak with your attorney about. Any other questions?
No other questions? Okay, we thank you, Mr. Duncan, for that
Good.
presentation. I'm
Good
sure
luck.
you'll find it
Thank you.
useful. Thank you. Let's see where we are. Okay, at this time, we'll be going to our first public session. I would like to read some of the regulations regarding that so that there is no confusion. And I do ask that both our public as well as our board members abide by these guidelines. During the first public comment session, participants are restricted to items that are on the agenda for that meeting. It will be helpful to the board if the speaker identifies the specific item of the agenda that's going to be spoken of. Other comments, questions, or concerns are restricted to the second public comment section. Participants, when you come to the microphone, you should state your name, place of residence, and any group affiliation if applicable. Your statement is limited to no more than 3 minutes. And this applies also to statements of a complimentary nature. All statements are directed to the presiding officer. You are not to address or question individual members of the board, nor are individual members of the board expected to comment or respond to you. Your cooperation in adhering to these will provide for a successful public session. I will remind you that essentially the public session is not intended to become a debate. It is an opportunity for you to bring up concerns or points to the board. We are making a special exception this evening. Mrs. Lang, are you here? Okay. Mrs. Lang, I had some conversations with her, and we are making a special exception for Mrs. Lang due to some medical circumstances that she is dealing with. We are granting her permission to speak on a topic which is not on the agenda, but this is a very special exception, and we'll now hear from Mrs. Lang, and then other speakers can come to the mic to speak on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Patricia Lang. I live at 74 McFarland Circle here in Monroe. I am going to speak about Park and Common Core. I am the parent of a 5th grade student and the representative of a group of over 300 parents, teachers, and residents who are questioning our involvement in park testing. Some of us have notified the district that we are refusing to allow our children to participate in park, and others have not. Regardless of whether or not we intend to refuse park this year, we feel strongly that the Board of Ed needs to develop and implement a policy that will support a parent's right to refuse to allow their children to participate in this testing. We understand the constraints that you, our board, are under. We also are aware of our rights as parents to refuse to have our children participate in statewide standardized assessments. It is our desire to work with our board to develop procedures that will recognize our parental rights to refuse park. We request that the Board of Education institute a policy that would help protect the privacy of and minimize the amount and type of data that will be collected on our children for whom we are refusing the park assessments. Being that students under the age of 18 are minors, it is our responsibilities as their parents to make decisions in their best interest. Parents who have chosen to refuse standardized testing for their minor children should be offered options as to what their child will do while testing and test prep is occurring. It is our desire for the district to develop a policy that will respect our right to refuse the standardized testing and maintain our children's dignity and self-esteem. We also request that the Board of Ed look to the long-range negative impacts of Park and Common Core and do what they can to stand up against it. If the state continues to force the Park and Common Core on our local educational systems, we hope that you, our Board of Education, will work with other boards and other entities around the state to protect the rights of parents who are refusing and implement policies that minimize the negative effects of this testing on our children. If the use of park continues, the district will need to explore alternate educational and assessment opportunities for our children whose parents are refusing the testing. A district-wide committee to do so should be established, and parents, along with classroom teachers, should serve on this committee. The district needs to explore how to minimize the impact of standardized testing on the educational environment. Other districts are doing away with content area tests in order to allow for greater focus to be placed on park prep. The shift to a park-focused educational environment is denying our children the opportunity to explore and master non-park subjects. It is taking away from their time spent learning science, history, world languages, and the arts. We need to find a way to put education back in education. We believe that Park and the Common Core need to be stopped. We come in front of you today wearing red to stop Park and the Common Core from ruining education for our children and our teachers. Thank you.
You timed that perfectly, Mrs. Lang.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your concerns. Okay, is there anyone who wants to address any items on the agenda?
Good evening, and you can tell me if I need to sit down. I want to address I'm Karen Castaldo, president of the MTEA, 4 Cypress Point Lane, Jackson, New Jersey. Addressing the superintendent search. Do I need to sit down, or can I address it at this time? I just want to make sure I'm clear. I just have a comment. I know the superintendent report went out, so I'm confused.
Okay, Mr. Gorski advises me that you are permitted to speak on this topic at this time.
Thank you. I'm here not only talking on behalf of the MTEA, but on behalf of the entire Monroe community. I've been in this district for 26 years. I enjoy this district. I love this district. I've been president for about 14, 15 years. In all of the years that I have been here, even prior before my presidency, there has always been a committee in regard to the superintendent search consisting of not only MTEA members, but parents in the community, community members, administrators, some students, and it occurred when we had finalists. And those meetings were, in my opinion, best practice meetings in terms of hiring a superintendent that is good for our Monroe community. I understand that this has all changed based on some legal, whatever. But anyway, I know that the legal issues are there, and I am only asking the board to reconsider when we're at the finalist point in time, that a committee be formed so we can put our community back in the table, back in the game, and move forward from there. Because there are many members, many community members, many parents that feel slighted or left out, and we don't really understand why. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Castaldo. Anyone else wishing to speak to the agenda? Okay, seeing no one else, we will then close the first public forum and move to the approval of minutes. All board members were given copies of the minutes for the public board meeting of November the 19th. Are there any comments or questions on that? Corrections? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Prezioso, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? One abstain. Anyone recusing? Okay, those minutes are there approved. Then we have the minutes of the closed session meeting of November the 19th. Are there any comments or corrections there? Okay, is there a motion? So moved. A second? Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
I'm sorry. I have to recuse myself on both of those, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yes, you weren't on the board at that time, correct? Okay, all right. Also, Mr. Mayo. Thank you. All right, at this time, we will hear the superintendent's report and recommendations. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I overlooked that. Are there any committee reports this evening? If so, just let me know. Okay, Mr. Kaufman?
Sure, we had a curriculum committee meeting this evening. We had two presentations. One was on the new academy platform that will be implemented this September, and I think it would be a good idea if we have a public presentation and a material maybe later in the year, just before this year ends, to give everybody a view of what the new academy structure is going to look like at the high school. Additionally, we were provided a technology survey, which I believe were given to the freshman class just as soon as they got their iPads this year, just to get an idea of how technologically proficient they are, so we can have like a benchmark of our students, where they were when they first entered the high school, and we're to keep track of how technologically proficient they are as they move through the high school, and look to move that technology proficiency down to the lower grades as well. So more to come on that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Any other chair people? Ms. Kolopanovich?
Okay, I have two reports this evening. The first is Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation. The first item is the Monroe Township Middle School site work. The outside work on the middle school is substantially completed, but all of the work has not been accepted. There have been some issues on the concrete work on the sidewalk and the stairs, so the board is holding some money on that contract until those issues are addressed. Second item is the structural report on the district bleachers. The bleachers at the high school, middle school, and the soccer fields are good. The football stadium bleachers are in good condition and could last another 10 years, except for there's wooden floorboards to walk on to get to the bleachers, and with the wear and tear and the elements of the weather, should be considered for replacement within the next 5 years. And the synthetic turf field is nearing its 10-year anniversary and probably should be looked at. Currently, there are no cameras at the field house and the playing fields. The closest cameras are located at the middle school, and the BG&T committee agreed that installing cameras in that area would be a good idea, especially with the amount of people that are attending games. So it was agreed by the committees to solicit quotes from vendors for pricing before going to the full board for approval. And the last item we discussed was redistricting. Ross Haber gave us an update on his redistricting report using the October 15th ASSA enrollment data. He is working with the township engineer on attendance zones and the most recent tax maps. He is also awaiting the mayor to sign off on updated construction information on the section, block, and lots of new developments. As soon as he is in receipt of all that information, the committee will reconvene to discuss whether or not to move forward with the redistricting and then bring a recommendation to the full board. And this decision needs to be made in a timely manner so that if we do move forward with the redistricting for this September, parents can be notified as soon as possible and our schools can begin preparing for the new look of some of the schools. So that concludes BG&T. Are there any questions on that? Okay, then I'll go to finance. The Finance Committee discussed the refunding of the Series 2006 and Series 2008 bonds that will give the district a cost savings of $2.4 million that will go directly back to the taxpayers. There is a resolution, I believe, on the agenda this evening to approve that refunding of those bonds. Then we talked about the upcoming 2015-2016 budget. We discussed the status of that, the operating budget. The budget is being compiled based on the parameters set forth at the Board Budget Philosophy Committee meeting back in August of 2014. There are no instructional programs being eliminated. There will be no more trailers in the district after June of 2015, and staffing requirements are very conservative. Included in the budget are renovations for 9 additional classrooms at the middle school, giving it much needed more classroom space, a temporary solution to the roof at Woodland School, a payment for new technology devices at the high school, and the cost for the additional 200 plus students that we're expecting to arrive next year. We have not received the amount of what our funding from the state will be, nor have we received the rateable numbers from the town. So at this time, we do not have a tax implication to our community. The preliminary budget will be unveiled in March public meeting, at which time the public will have their opportunity to speak to the budget. There was also a discussion on MECA, the ECE, which early childhood education, and the BASC programs. It was unanimously decided by the committee to bring a vote on the elimination of MECA to the full board this evening for discussion and a possible vote, but it's my belief that the committee decision has now been sent back to the Finance Committee for more information. So that concludes my finance report.
Thank you, Ms. Kolopanovich. Is there another? Ms. Arminio?
Yes. Thank you, Board President Poi. This is in reference to the policy committee that never met. We had 3 opportunities, but the weather superseded that, and we had to cancel the policy meeting 3 times, so I apologize to the public. But what will be on the agenda when we finally do get another date are some things that currently the public may be interested in. There's a policy that will be discussed, 8110, which is attendance areas, pupil records, which is policy 8330. If parents would like to review those policies, right now, nothing has changed, but we are in the process of reviewing our policies. And the policy meeting, when we get one, hopefully the weather will hold out, is open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Arminio. Any other reports? Okay, now we'll move to the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Mr. President, it is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education approve personnel items A through X. X.
Okay, is there a motion to approve items A through X? Okay, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? No questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Gorski?
Thank you. Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman? Yes. Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Ms. DeMayo? Yes. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Nostine? Yes. Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Ryback?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Board President, personnel items A through X passes.
Regarding board action, Mr. President, it is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education approve board items A through H.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Nostine?
Just a quick question with regards to E. I know in the past we've always had this, but I just was at a semantic question. Basically, this violence, substance abuse, estimated violence, vandalism, are these just the costs? Because we used to also just list the incidents if there were no costs. Are these...
Mr. Board President? Mr. Nostine, there are no incidents being reported this month. That's why there's no cost associated with it. But in the past, as you probably recall, if there is an incident of vandalism or vandalism in particular to the district, the student is responsible, or their parents are responsible to reimburse the district for their costs, and that has always been submitted to the business office in previous.
Okay, no, but I was mainly just, I mean, I just wonder, were there any substance abuse incidents that weren't costly, that didn't cost us anything? So basically, we had no incidences at all. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Gorski, would you now give us your business administrator's report? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Roll call.
Sorry about that. Do we have a motion to approve items A through J?
Motion approved.
My second.
A through H.
On board action?
Yes.
Okay, it's A through H?
Yes.
Okay, that's items A through H. I'm sorry about that. Okay, all right.
Okay, board action items A through H was moved by Mr. Nostine, seconded by Mr. Braverman. I will now proceed with a roll call. Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
Yes.
Ms. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Nostine?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mr. Ryback?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Board President, board action items A through H passes. Mr. Superintendent, does that conclude your report?
It does.
That takes us to the business administrator report.
Mr. Gorski, would you now give us your report, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Board President, members of the Board of Education, members of the public, there's an 11-page resolution on tonight, and this resolution sets forth the parameters for maturities, interest rates, underwriter discount, et cetera, for the refunding bonds, with the actual terms to be approved by me within such parameters. It also appoints 2 underwriters, an escrow agent and a verification agent. Our financial advisor and I solicited bids for all appointed positions. Due to the size of our refunding and our exceptional credit quality of the district, bids from 6 underwriters were solicited and all responded to the request. The resolution also requires me to report back to the board with the actual sale terms of the refunding bonds, which, based upon current schedule, will be at the April meeting. I do not have to read the 11-page resolution. It was previously submitted to the board, so we're spared that this evening. So, Mr. Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through J be approved by consent roll call.
So moved. Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions or comments? Mr. Braverman?
Under professional appointments, number 1, aren't all our buildings handicap accessible?
Yes, that's correct.
Then why do we need somebody to evaluate whether a wheelchair will come aboard?
I believe that number 1 is to conduct wheelchair assessments for the specific equipment, not for the facilities. It's for a professional to come in and work on assessment of the wheelchairs.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could we have a roll call vote?
Yes, and
This
for
is to
full,
approve items A through J.
yes, and for full disclosure, the resolutions for the refunding require a 2/3 majority vote. They're unique in that nature, so I wanted to point that out. Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Mr. Mayo. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes, but recuse on letter D.
Recuse on D as in David. So noted. Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, board action items A through J passes. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gorski. At this time, I'll give a brief report. I would like to give an update to the board as well as the community on our current status of our superintendent search. The deadline for applications was January 9th, at which time we had received 38 completed applications. Screenings were done by the New Jersey School Boards Association of all documents that were received. They also conducted interviews of those candidates, and that yielded 37 candidates who met or exceeded the criteria set by this board back in the fall. Of those 37, 18 are currently serving as superintendents or assistant superintendents. 8 are currently serving as principals or vice principals. 9 are in a position of being a director or supervisor. 3 fell into other categories. 21 candidates held doctorate degrees. 32 were from New Jersey, and 6 others were from diverse states: Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, Massachusetts, Illinois, and Virginia. On January 21st, the board met in closed session to review the resumes and select those that we wanted to interview. We also formulated the questions that each candidate would be asked. We selected 11 people to interview, but 2 withdrew before we began conducting the first round. During the first week of February, which was last week, we interviewed 9 candidates, and we are now in the process of conducting our second round of interviews. I would also like to offer some congratulations to some of our teams here at the high school. On January 20th, our academic team placed second among 38 teams in a rigorous competition held at High Tech High School in Monmouth County. The team consisted of Brat Nadendla, Sherry Bay, Tatiana Drolishevskaya, Neil Patel, Michelle Banker, and Elena Magna. On January 15th, over 100 Monroe High School students volunteered to take tests after school in biology, chemistry, and physics. This test was conducted by the New Jersey Science League. Science supervisor Bonnie Casaletto indicated that only 17 students from our school had participated in this competition about 8 years ago. It is good to see that this past year we had over 100 students, which is a 6-fold increase in students interested in competing in the area of sciences. Finally, our mock trial team. They were crowned Middlesex County champions on February the 4th. They went on to compete in the Central Jersey Regional Finals against winning teams from Mercer, Union, Somerset, Hunterdon, Monmouth, and Burlington counties. And that concludes my report. At this time, we'll hear any other board business. Is there any other? Ms. Arminio?
I'd just like to congratulate all the teams for their efforts in winning, and that would be, it's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Kolopanovich?
Yeah, at the January 14th Board of Education meeting, Mr. Gorski stated in his BA report, and he talked about the refinancing of the Oak Tree bonds, and it would be a cost savings of $2.4 million during the life of the bonds. And there was a comment made by one of the board members that said, quote, "That's the kind of money we're talking about." And I was a little taken aback by that comment, because that's the kind of money the board has always tried to do. So I went back and did some research, and I'd like to give the public, because I know that there were some questions from the public, an idea of some of the significant cuts that we have made in the past. We refinanced the 2002 series bonds, saving $1.5 million. We refinanced the 2003 series bonds, saving $2.5 million. And we refinanced the 2006-2008 series bonds, savings $3.7 million. That's $7.7 million that went directly back to the taxpayers. The board authorized the district to become a member of the Middlesex County Purchasing Consortium, saving us $1.2 million so far. The high school bond surplus of $5.5 million and the Oak Tree bond surplus of $350,000 were given back to the taxpayers. Most other districts would have used that money to enhance their building projects. Our board decided it was more important to help out the community. We negotiated an insurance opt-out with our staff that saved us $4.3 million so far. We also negotiated the continuation of Chapter 78 contributions with the MTEA that will save us $6 million over the last 2 years of the contract. Chapter 78 sunsets this year, and many other districts are not negotiating a continuation of Chapter 78. We've saved $3.7 million in changes to health care, and by eliminating some of our programs that we have saved over $400,000. These are just some of the significant cuts that we've made to our past budgets. In the past 5 years, the district has saved $30,834,300, which we have eliminated from the budget, we have negotiated in the budget, or have given directly back to the taxpayers. So I just wanted the public to know that we have always, past boards, done our due diligence in making sure that we have come up with a fair budget that it helps our children and yet is fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. And that concludes that report.
Thank you, Ms. Kolopanovich. That was interesting information, and I'm sure that it'll be appreciated by our public as well as all the members on the board. Thank you for that report. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we will go into the second public session. I will not reread the rules. I will simply enforce them if it becomes necessary. Just keep in mind that during this session, anyone coming to the microphone will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Leonard. I live at 8 Cypress Drive here in Monroe Township. I'm here tonight to express my concern about Park and the Common Core standards. As an educator, both old school and new school, I have participated in the changes that Common Core has mandated. These changes are not in our students' best interests. The Common Core is one size fits all. We all know children. There are many sizes. Same families have different children. What I have experienced, they're not developmentally appropriate. We're asking too much of 2 young children. we're setting them up for failure. I tell my students success breeds success, and the opposite, failure, breeds more failure. The PARC tests are not differentiated. Good teachers differentiate their instruction minute by minute to meet those needs of our children. Then we subject them to a test that is not only not normed, it's not like a test, standardized test like the CAT or the Terra Nova. It is completely different. The time spent prepping for these tests is ridiculous. I've spent 3 weeks of every quarter preparing my students for the test. Because where I work, we did prep tests before the tests. And we had to prep for the prep test, and we had to reteach after the prep test. Their entire education was learning how to test. What I'm asking for you tonight is to join with Dr. Chris Tinkin and Diane Ravenich and others to return common sense to education, to get good teaching practices back into the classrooms. This country was founded in the belief that citizens have the right to change what is wrong. The Common Core is wrong. We need to stand up and let the legislators know that this is not right for our children, that we need good, sensible teaching practices that meet the individual needs of each child in the classroom, that they are not cookie cutters expected to do the same things at the same time. There's too many differences out there to go that way. Quit comparing us to Japan or other countries where they only teach an elite group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Leonard, for your comments.
Hello, my name is Christine Walters. I live at 31 Texas Road in Monroe. I was previously in the early childhood education field for 17 years, and I'm currently a senior nursing student. I have 3 children in the district in 3 different schools. I would like to start with a little history of Common Core and how it came to be. 5 people, along with 2 lobbyist groups, small capitalist organizations, and federal government were funded $150 million originally by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to create Common Core behind closed doors and implement it into our schools in a way that makes it impossible to pull out. Bill Gates has spent $2.5 billion to date on Common Core. We have spent much more, promoting it and buying off groups to get on board to nationally market it. My question to you, all of you, is what qualifies them to do so? New Jersey, along with originally 45 other states, accepted Common Core standards before they were even written in exchange for $5 billion of American taxpayers' money. And they were told that they would get a waiver for the No Child Left Behind Act, which educators did not believe in. Somewhere along the line, a group of people who were not qualified to do so decided that standard-based education is the best for our children. Outcome-based education is less important where the kids are met in the classroom, and the focus is on where they end up at the end of the road. So inevitably, teachers will have no choice but to teach to the test. Our children are individuals who grow and learn at different rates. One size does not fit all. Common Core boasts the enhancement of critical thinking skills. This would require a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for critical thinking and is not fully developed until 21 years of age. Common Core decreases reading by 50% and increases writing by 50%. If we are only telling the children to write without reading, we are not allowing the development of the prefrontal cortex. We are then indoctrinating them with informational, politically charged texts instead of ethics, morality, and character. When we ask the kids to write critically using emotionally charged language to persuade instead of inform, the thought process is then directed to the limbic system, and the child goes into fight or flight mode. This constant state of stress is statistically linked with long-term psychological issues, depression, and PTSD. Developmentally, our children do not have the ability to temper their judgment, so we teach to the test that has never been benchmarked against any other country before. I'm appalled with the Common Core, with a lack of explanation the poorly designed materials, and the infringement upon my parental rights, as well as my child's privacy rights. My daughter came home with an informational text last week from school titled, "Should Parents Help with Homework?" Homework can be stressful, but help from mom and dad might be the wrong answer. Coupled with texts that cite your state and national elected officials care about what you are learning and think it's important for you to learn X, Y, and Z, as it's stated in my daughter's social studies books. What kind of message are we sending our children? My hope is that you will all join us in taking the first step in getting back local control so that we may continue educating our children in a safe, healthy, productive manner. I expect that you will support me, my children, and the growing number of families that will be refusing the PARCC exam by implementing an appropriate policy that is best for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Walters.
How you doing? Doug Dale, 653 Spotswood Englishtown Road. I decided not to have my daughter, a sophomore, take the PARCC. My decision is based on 3 factors. 1, I don't trust the test. I don't feel the state's PARCC rollout preparation has been sufficient. It's confusing, it's unorganized. There has been an unnecessary rush of the state to get the test out to districts with little care in actual academic interest of the local school district. I'm simply not going to put her through days' worth of testing on content that is different from what she is learning in her classes. Now, this is not a reflection to the teachers, administration, or the district. It's on the state that this test has not been directly linked academically to what New Jersey students are actually being taught. The state says it's Common Core linked, but the way the Pearson Company has worded the questions is not how students are learning. 2, my daughter's welfare is more important than the PARCC. I don't feel that she should be put through a stress of taking this test when the results will have little importance to her as a student. There's enough pressure just being a 15-year-old high school student looking at going on to college in a short 2 years and having to perform her best just to get there. She's anxious enough knowing that she'll have to take the SAT soon. Adding on the demands to do well on the test that she's not prepared for will surely be detrimental to her well-being. Enough is enough on high-stakes testing. 3, I don't like the idea that the state collecting data on my daughter may have a negative impact on her future if she doesn't do well. I don't like that this data will follow her around, good or bad. It hasn't been made clear on what the data will be used for or where it will go, and I don't want her name being connected to irrelevant or possibly damaging information. I don't like that a for-profit company will be using her information for more profit, and I don't trust that this current state government will not use this information for political reasons. So until this becomes a mandatory for reasons related to her graduation or college acceptance, my daughter will not participate. Lastly, what I think is most important for the children of Monroe not taking the PARCC, I'd rather this district, whose #1 core belief is noted that all decisions are made on the premise that children come first, take the lead in Middlesex County by establishing a suitable alternative location that is educationally sound for students who are refusing to take the PARCC. Please don't take the easy way out by just repeating Commissioner Hesby's prepared tough talk script of refuse the PARCC and you will sit and stare at the walls as punishment, or be truant if you stay home. That's not Monroe. We're educators, and the sit and stare policy is not an educated life lesson we should be teaching our children. Thank you for your time. Go Falcons.
Thank you, Mr. Dale.
My name is Taylor Walters, and I live at 31 Texas Road. I am a 7th grader at the middle school, and I have been an honor roll throughout my school career. I have also prided myself in making a difference and getting involved in programs like Character Crew and Circle of Friends, and up until yesterday, the Technology Student Association, or TSA. After much thought, I decided to drop out because there is great pressure from Common Core and PARCC prep. I spend endless hours on homework, being drilled in ELA and math. Our math book has minimal instructions, so when we are confused, there are no references. In ELA, we write the same things over and over again until our hands hurt. I'm frustrated because my teachers tell me on a regular basis that we will have to cram for PARCC. I don't believe that we are learning anything of value in class. The focus is only on acing the test. How does anyone expect us to absorb information with poorly designed textbooks, fast lessons, and the stress that comes along with it all? I feel defeated. I stand here tonight with hope that this won't be our lives for years to come. I believe that the first step to making the change, because nothing is unchangeable, is to refuse the park. In the beginning, I was scared to refuse because I was afraid of punishment, but now the frustration is unbearable, and I have hope that the policy for non-test test takers is fair, so that students like my 10-year-old sister will not be fearful of going to school on park days. I hope that someday soon we will be able to go to school without Common Core and park hanging over our heads. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walters.
Hello, I'm Kevin Cawley, 33 Linwood Drive in Monroe. I'm a parent of 2 students in grades 7 and 9 here in Monroe. I have another child that graduated from Monroe High School and is away at college. I'm not an education professional. I happen to be a credentialed professional actuary for 25 years. My exposure to Common Core is that my youngest daughter, I was unable to help her with my math homework as essentially a professional in applied mathematics. The basics, long division, simplifying fractions, proportions. When I tried to help my daughter with her homework, the answer I got is we don't do it that way. We have to show it some other way. I said, fine, show me the examples. I don't have examples. I said, where are the materials? This is crazy. Let's figure this out. It was completely frustrating. I did some searches on the internet, and these other methods, we have to show some sort of special way of explaining how to do it. It's nonsense. My friends and I did advanced math in public high school, just like Monroe, and we all did fine. This is a solution in search of a problem. It's crazy. The teachers aren't ready. I don't believe the materials are ready. This thing was rammed through. They say, explain how you do it. Everyone knows the way you do these problems is you do a lot of different word problems, and that's how you learn it. That's basic. One of the gentlemen up here explained about all the high school students that achieved these awards and everything. They didn't have PARC. They didn't have Common Core all through the way. We all know people, engineers, lawyers, scientists. They didn't have Common Core. They didn't have PARC. It's crazy. We're spending way too much time on this. We need to have respectful procedures for students that are opting out of this. And I thank you for allowing me to make these remarks. And anyone who says people that are against PARC are against testing, that's nonsense. We all did testing growing up. The Iowa thing, you did it once a year. You filled in the circles. They figured out if a school had a problem. This is common sense. This is not rocket science. This is a waste. This is a money grab. There's consultants, foundations. You follow the money, do some internet searches, and you'll figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Sue Voza. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Applegarth Elementary School, and I live in Freehold. When it came to my attention that there's a complicated decision to eliminate MECA, I had to ask myself, what is the most important responsibility as a board member and mine as an educator in Monroe? In both of our roles, the commonality is the children. We are here to enrich and foster our youth to ensure student success. Our jobs are rooted in the development and well-being of children. The Monroe Employee Child Care Academy isn't just an institution to enhance young minds prior to entering kindergarten, but it happens to be a family of nurturing teachers. Since it's a newer business, more time needs to be given to understand the trade-offs between a child's development and the ability of youth seeing its financial gains. I've been a 5th grade teacher in Monroe Township for 15 years now, one including a maternity leave of 1 year. One of the reasons that I actually returned was knowing that MECA was an option for my husband and I to enroll our children. Having peace of mind that my twin daughters are well taken care of, enriched, and cherished adds to my productivity as a teacher. I enrolled my daughters when they were 1.5 years old and am so greatly appreciative of MECA. I could have found another child care facility near my home and not returned to Monroe, but then I wouldn't be standing here today, this year's Applegarth Teacher of the Year, voicing my pride in MECA's program. Several excellent teachers returned to their positions after maternity leave due to MECA. So please think about how many exceptional teachers you might lose if you close MECA's doors. Upon exploring other child care centers, I found that for 5 days a week, tuition can be around $850 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., including before and after care. I pay over $1,000 a month for 2 little girls to attend MECA only 2 days a week. Another facility's tuition was about $300 less for the 2 days a week, So it's just very interesting that 75% of the research childcare centers are less expensive than Mecca. However, I still choose Mecca. I am able to give my students my undivided attention and teaching skills since I'm not weighed down by the uncertainty of who's taking care of my children. My focus on teaching may not be as evident had they been in another facility. Research shows that employee productivity increases when you definitely have satisfied workers. I choose Mecca not because it was any convenience or less costly for my family, but because of the staff and the family there. They're part of the Monroe family and have an excellent reputation for nurturing youth. My daughters are part of a school setting where they feel extremely safe, and then I feel secure trusting that the staff will take the very best care of them. Although, like I said, tuition is not the cost-efficient way for me with this center, I continue to utilize the facility due to the fact that our 3-year-old twins are very happy while learning. So my confusion lies here. Since all staff members who have children enrolled in Mecca do pay tuition, how could it be such a substantial budget component where you feel that it would have to be eliminated? I strongly urge you to keep Mecca's doors open. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Marie Kappas. I live at 21 Avenue H in Monroe Township. And I'm standing here tonight as a representative of our Mecca parents, and I am the mom of 3 children, all who attend Mecca. I love that you got to see a poster, so I'll show you 3 of my cuties. The vision behind starting Mecca was that it would allow for teachers who are on maternity leave to return to work sooner. And since Mecca's opening in fall of 2012, I know of at least 12 teachers who have taken half a year of maternity and then enrolled in Mecca, which directly correlates to this vision, and this provides a cost savings to the district. I can tell you personally, I came back after 4 months with my second and 4 months after my third. I attended the board meeting in 2013 where the previous board asked Dr. Hamilton to create a solvency plan to enhance Mecca's profitability, and the kindergarten enrichment program was created. Both programs have flourished and continue to grow. There are currently 42 children enrolled in Mecca and 35 in the kindergarten enrichment for a total of 77 students. Just to compare, the first year of Mecca that it was open, there were 4 children in my oldest son's class, and now there are 15 in his pre-K class. Keep in mind that Mecca also gave up a classroom to the kindergarten enrichment program, which has an effect on enrollment. We could expand the age range for each classroom and open enrollment even further if we had that classroom back. There are 12 Mecca families that are also Monroe families, as is mine, who will be entering our school district. We can provide you some more factual information in the very near future through a survey we have created and we will be sending out to our staff. The Mecca parents and supporters of this program are urging the board to listen to suggestions we sent you via mail or email to help continue to increase Mecca's profitability, and ask you to support and continue to service this program, which is not only necessary for working parents, as you have just heard, but which we and our children hold near and dear to our hearts. And I can tell you on a personal level, honestly, I don't know what I would do without Mecca, and I am beyond grateful that our district has put something in place for working parents such as me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Hello, Amy Antelis, 1049 Morning Glory Drive. I don't think I need to elaborate any more on the park. I think the heartfelt concern that was addressed tonight by the parents and the students here was enough. But I'd like to urge the board and the community to actually go to christinkin.com and read the article that Dr. Tinkin wrote. Dr. Tinkin is a well-respected educator and curriculum person in the state of New Jersey. And I would just like to read the last paragraph of this article because I think it really sums it up. He says, "We have the ultimate assessment system already working in our classrooms. It's called the teacher. Let's invest in developing teachers' assessment skills instead of spending millions of dollars on tests that do not tell us anything new about our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Antilles.
Hello, Board of Ed. Ken Chiarella, 116 Pergola Avenue. Mr. Poi, congratulations on your presidency.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Mrs. Lang and all the parents that came out today to speak about Park and Common Core. I just want to reiterate that what you heard here is the need for a policy. So my hope is that when you adjourn and you move forward, that you look at a good comprehensive policy that will enable our parents and our students to be able to know, that if they decide to refuse, what the parameters are and what their recourse is. I think that one of the things that we have to remember here is that everybody likes to talk about transparency, but I think the reason that you're probably not hearing from a lot of parents is because they don't know that they can refuse. And I can tell you that when you talk to parents and you are a parent like I am, you see it for yourself. You see what Common Core has to offer or doesn't have to offer. You live through the homework, which I hope there aren't any kids here, is really hell. And you go through that over and over again just to then be assessed on a test and have all that anxiety. I just think that there may be parents that decide that they don't want to opt out or opt their children out or refuse, but they might want to know that they can do that, and I think that that's an important part. And just a couple other things. I think that with Common Core, what we need to do, or with you, what you need to do as a board, is to let our teachers do what they do best, which is teach, and not have to teach to a test. They teach what they know, and teach our children so that they're successful. I do have a couple other questions though. One is that last year we were told that Mecca was well on its way to being a money-making venture, or was a money-making venture, and would be paying back the loan and would be profitable. And now I'm hearing that you're looking to scrap it. Is it not profitable now? Is that why?
Evening.
Evening.
That's a common misunderstanding, and I'm glad you brought it up. Mecca, as it was originally initiated, was a child care service. And the model for that service was not to have a profit-generating business function. It was mainly designed to break even and provide a service for staff. The break-even point for Mecca was approximately 75 enrolled students. It has never materialized to that number, and in fact the number is about 42 as we speak, but it fluctuates. So the Mecca segment for providing daycare has and still is a money-losing endeavor. The board directed Dr. Hamilton to come up with a solvency plan, and as somebody mentioned, that's when early childhood enrichment was initiated. The two fused together are profitable because early childhood enrichment is quite a profitable model. And when you blend the two together under the name Mecca, which is consolidated in the same fund, it is breaking even, profitable at times, and as the financial statement, which I'm going to present to the Finance Committee next meeting, it has now dipped into the negative once again, and that's simply a result of fees being generated. So Mecca as a daycare segment has and still loses money. It is brought to solvency with the infusion of revenues from early childhood enrichment.
Okay. And can you tell us what the outcome of closed session was? I know there was a lengthy closed session, but I'm not sure what happened. Was there any resolution? Is there going to be any action taken tonight?
The entire discussion of closed session is still confidential. We cannot share any information with you at this time.
Okay. I'd ask as soon as that is, as soon as that's resolved, that the public gets to hear about that and find out what went on in there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stacy Blum. I work at Barclay Brooks School, and I'm requesting that you keep Mecca open. My children were among the first to enroll when Mecca opens its doors in September 2012. We could not have been more pleased with the school, teachers, and the program. And it's so nice to have a daycare so close to my school and on the same schedule. Plus, we are saving a lot of money by using Mecca over other daycares. And I know the school is growing every year, and I urge you to please keep Mecca open to continue benefiting my child and more children for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Esther Gregory, 2 Kelly Court. Speaking as a parent, I refuse for my 4th grader to take the PARCC test. Speaking with educators, it is not developmentally appropriate for him to take it. I have a 4th grader. I refuse for him to take it. We have access to another classroom to read, study, complete homework or special projects. I also have a 2nd grader, so I'm trying to pair him for next year. I have a 7th grader, which I am on the fence of should he take the PARCC test. My kids are capable of testing. I just think it's inappropriate at this time, and I'm speaking to a lot of parents, and I'm hearing back about how this will place for basic skills, TAG, accelerated classes, honors, and special education, and they're concerned. I'm listening to them. I'm trying to, and thank you for Patty, Kathy, and Christine with working with me and helping me on this one. So thank you for listening, but I refuse for my 4th grader especially. It's inappropriate for grades 3 through 5. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
This is nice. Lou Masters, 9 Michaela Court. This is very nice. Congratulations. That was good. I was going to talk about Common Core, but most of my thunder was stolen. But let's talk about Pearson. If you remember last year, I'm not a big fan. Last year we had that vote, which I was very upset with most of the board, where we actually had Pearson. This was Pearson's recommendation. Pearson had their own consultants come in to tell us whether the Pearson software was actually working and whether or not we should buy more Pearson software. It's ridiculous. Pearson's actually being investigated by the FBI in California for bid fixing. Rutgers Graduate School won't allow them to submit bids anymore. It's a bad company. Somebody said it's all about the money. It is all about the money. Originally, they were going to make, now these are their numbers, $24 per student, which by their original estimates was $240 million on this exam. One exam. Every time somebody takes it or administers it. It's now down, since everybody's been backing out, to half of that. They're at a 50% utilization rate with this exam. They're down to $120 million, though, one exam. There's something called the Student Privacy Pledge, which things like the National School Board Association has put a lot of work into, the White House, Congress. Pearson will not sign that pledge. Why? They want to monetize student data. It's plain and simple. We need to also put into our policies wording to the effect that they cannot sell any of the information on our students from these exams. They're going to do it. And then do you want information following your students following your kids for the next 15, 20 years? It'll happen. Our generation worried about cookies. Now you're going to be worried about the PARCC exam results that I took when I was in 5th grade and whether or not I can go to college. I think it's a joke. Back to refusing. I refused my kids. Every test I could take, I refused with this. Every kid I refused. I think it's very, very poorly mandated. It's very poorly structured. Who do I depend on? Somebody said it perfectly. I depend on the teachers. I don't care about these exams. My son's bringing home these paragraphs. He's asking me what they mean. I don't know half of what they mean. And then he has to type, and he only types 7 words a minute. He's not going to finish the test on time. You know what? I refuse the entire thing. The big issue, I think, is all the hearsay that's going around. I know there was some information, and the lack, we're getting a lot, of course, from the public, a lot of rumor mill. We're not getting any from the Board of Ed. I went through and I kind of categorized some of the nastier ones, and I'd like maybe a response. Somebody posted that if a parent refuses, they could be legally forced to have their child take the exam. That was one. If a child refuses, their child will be sent home.
If the child refuses, they will not be admitted into other programs. Somebody mentioned it before, tags, anything like that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Tesler. Mr. Masters, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
wrong one. He's in the back. But thank you. I like this is nice. I like that.
Karen Castaldo, MTEA, President for Cypress Point Lane, Jackson, New Jersey. On behalf of the parents, what I'm listening to, and the students in regard to park, my father used to tell me, if someone told you to jump off the bridge, would you follow that person? Or if someone told you to do, I don't know, run across the street and we'll give you $50 on a highway, would you do it? Just because we're getting a dictate, a mandate from the state or from our even county superintendent stating that we must do this and there's a hard stance taken in the county, do we have to do it? The parents are only asking for an opt-out policy, a safe place for their children where they can go to with educational resources. That's what they're asking for. We can debate about park all night. I can tell you I'm totally against park. That's just my opinion and everything I know about it. So what they're asking is for an opt-out policy. There are 108 districts that have created an opt-out policy thus far in New Jersey. 4 are in our county right now: Woodbridge, Edison, North Brunswick, and East Brunswick. So just because someone tells you to do something and you think it's wrong doesn't mean you have to do it. So I hope that this board would step up to the plate and support our parents and our students who choose to opt out. And where this goes, we will know in the future. Let's see what happens when this test occurs. And then it'll be a political nightmare and we'll move on and move past that. So I asked the board to consider an opt-out policy.
Thank you, Ms. Castaldo.
Hello, Dominique Walters, 5 St. James Street, Monroe, New Jersey. I can go on and on about Mecca and how much we all love it here. It's unbelievable. But what I want you to all realize before just shutting the doors and voting it down, you have many options that you can exhaust before doing this. There's many ways to make Mecca profitable. As a mother of 3, I have used other daycares for my older daughter. I had increased absences with those other daycares. Many of their events were during school hours. I also used home babysitters, where I had to take days off when their children were sick or they themselves were sick. Mecca is unbelievable. I can go on and on, everything that was said already, but please, don't close their doors.
Hi, Corinne Masters, 9 Michaela Court. 2 issues. One is, I just want to say my first grader last week, on Monday and Wednesday, got 2 new students in his class, so he is now at 26. My 3rd grader is at 26 children in his class, and my 5th grader is at 28 students in his class. The large class sizes are ridiculous at this point in time at Oak Tree and Applegarth. I work at a Title I school. I have 18 students in my class, and the average class size is 20. It's kind of sad when a Title I school has less children in a class than a district like Monroe. My second issue is as a special educator currently becoming a park proctor, I've chosen to opt out my 3rd grader and my 5th grader at this time. I will not let my children be guinea pigs for the political gains of other people in this state. It's sad that my children have not had a lot of opportunities to read novels, but rather spend all their time bringing home and reading informational text. I've had it with the informational text. We need to get back to actual reading for enjoyment other than just graphs and true things. Not every child responds to that. And some children like to read other things. So just want to give my 2 cents, and Lou said the rest. So.
Thank you.
Hi, Don Marie Stamega, school counselor here at the high school. And on the subject of Mecca, I have 2 daughters there right now, and I actually just recently returned from maternity leave in October, and I only took 3 months maternity leave. And the reason that I did that is because I knew that I had Mecca here for my child. rather than repeat many of what you've heard today, you've all heard from me personally as well, I'd like to make a suggestion. When Mecca was in talk of opening, they sent out a survey to the staff to generate an assessment of what its enrollment would be like, what you would profit from that program. I'd like to suggest that before having the Finance Committee make a decision based on factual data that you have right now, also consider sending out another survey, generating some information. I think that you might find that there are at least 17 people on maternity leave right now that have strong intentions of enrolling their children in Mecca upon their return. I think that you would find that given it more time, that you'll have increased enrollment, which also would generate more funding. So I think that it would be important and beneficial to look at that data before just making a unilateral decision based on a financial committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public speakers, the public session is now closed. Okay, one more speaker.
Dave Varelis, Monroe Township High School, 13 Evergreen Terrace, right here in Monroe Township. I didn't prepare anything beautiful for Mecca, but I can vouch for the beautiful people that take care of my beautiful daughter every day. They're amazing. And at the end of the day, every single day, I walk out of that school and I hold her hand and she says, "I had fun at school." You can't put a price on that.
Thank you. Okay, public session is now closed. Are there any comments from superintendent or assistant superintendent or the business administrator on anything?
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
Lou, as you mentioned, that you had a couple questions. As a matter of fact, as far as the impact on students by the test, by the testing administration, by teachers, by the Board of Education. Just want to make it very clear is that obviously as we go through this process of the PARCC test, standards, et cetera, it's all become very political. There's no doubt about that. But right now, as we go forward, I need to assure everybody in the community that the Board of Education, the administration, the teachers, principals, there will be no hurting of any children, obviously, for the sake of a test. You need to know that. Obviously, the board will be receptive to what you said this evening, but you should know also is the fact that as far as what we can do and what we can't do is dictated, obviously, by the mandates of the state, but also you should also be aware, and I heard a couple things tonight as far as class sizes. You should know that's actually impacting as far as what we can do for PARCC and what we can't do for PARCC. Just to give you an example, is that if you do have, let's say, 27 students on one side of town and you have the 15 or maybe 18 or on the other side of town, you should just know that when it comes to testing, and those of you that are educators know this, is that if you have, let's say, 27 kids in a class and you're pulling out maybe 5 or 6 or 7, let's say, for special needs or small groups or maybe learning disabilities, whatever it may be, you're then requiring other classrooms for that test. So you should just know that Oak Tree is probably limited. There's no doubt about that. The high school may have some space to do an alternative setting. We can't do it. Brookside does not have the settings as well either. So we're being dictated by that. That's one concern. The other thing, too, is that you should just know is that, listen, I hear and I understand the concerns and the pain that you have. You should know that, probably know since I've been around for a while, as you know, as an elder in the Monroe community. It was the MBS, I think it was the minimum basic skills test. Then it was ESPA, then it was the GEPA, the GEPA, then it was the HSPA, then it was HSPT, then New Jersey Ask, we had the Terra Novas, et cetera. With each testing administration came more parent anxiety, more teacher anxiety, et cetera. We got through that. Certainly is that we'll get through the PARCC assessment as well too, but again is that I just wanted to make sure is the fact that you understand no child will be hurt. You can be guaranteed by this board, obviously, and by the administration, by the teachers. And they heard you, the board heard you this evening. But again, is that there are realities as far as what we can do. There may be a compromise, maybe. I'm thinking is that at the very least, if a parent wants to opt out, so to speak, as you use that phrase, the child would stay in the testing environment, but maybe just do some quiet reading. If we can't provide the physical facilities, at least there would be that sort of a compromise. I think you just understand, though, is that We are counting, as a Board of Education, as the administration, we are counting on that park data, though, to make assessments of our instructional programs based upon how well the kids do or don't do. So that assessment is needed, and that is required. But again, is that we may be able to do something like that, that would at least maybe appease some of the parents. But you should just know is that right now, there's nothing on the table as far as an alternative setting. We're receptive, but that is up to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few comments relating to what Mr. Ventrilo has said, and essentially I'm going to quote from some materials that we received from the New Jersey School Boards Association regarding the park assessment. The State Board of Education has identified the park assessment as the state's testing program beginning with this academic year. State regulation contains the following provision, and I quote, "All students at grades levels 3 through 12 shall take appropriate statewide assessments as scheduled." And as I said, the park is the statewide assessment. So we have no choice in terms of that. We must give the statewide, the park test. Also, there's a matter of the code of ethics that every member of this board swore to and signed off on at the beginning of the year. It says that I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to the schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. Now, since the State Board has mandated, essentially they have required that the park be the state assessment this year, the board has no choice in this. We would be in violation of the Code of Ethics if we did not support the administration of the park test. I understand your concerns. I am a former educator, I was a math teacher, and I have grandchildren in the school system. And I have looked at some of the sample tests that they have on their website. And if you haven't done that yet, then I would suggest that you might do that. So I have some idea of what those tests are like. And I certainly sympathize with the actuarial father that spoke earlier, even when it's not park related. Sometimes my grandchild will come to me and they'll say, "Papa, I need you to help me with this," and I will look at it. And I know that there's various ways of doing it, but I'm also very much aware that if I explain it differently than they've heard it in the classroom, it's going to be confusing to them. And so I have to tread very, very carefully with that. For a parent who's not trained in math education, it's very frustrating for you because you know the one way that you learned it, but it is being taught by different methods, those skills and those understandings. So I understand your frustration, I really do, and that's all I have to say at this particular point on the park, except that the board must rely upon our administration, and that is our central office administration as well as our building principals. They will be the one implementing the testing, and we have to rely on them to do the job that they see fit for the children of the township. And I trust that they will. I have no doubt about that. In terms of the MECA, since several of you spoke on that topic tonight, as you know, if you sent me an email, I responded to it. And it was because of the things that you wrote in your email that I discussed with our superintendent whether or not we should have further discussion on the MECA program by the Finance Committee. So I do thank you for those emails. I appreciated what you had to offer. Some of you were very constructive in your ideas. I have shared those with our business administrator as well as our superintendent, and that is the reason why there will be further discussion by the Finance Committee on the MECA program. Your voices have been heard on both MECA and Park tonight, and I certainly appreciate your cooperation and your civility with your presentations. I thank you, and at this time, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Yep, I keep forgetting these little procedures. I make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, our next board meeting will be tomorrow night. Okay, but that is a meeting strictly for the superintendent search process. It will not be open to the public. Thank you.
Did you second that?